Thank you so much, Karen and Bettina, and thank you, Natasha. It's been quite a journey. We're curious to hear how you're feeling now that we've started to share the work with audiences today.
Relax.
Great. This is what I love to hear.
I surrender.
We first met on a Zoom call with our directors, and Itha and I, we had a very terrible connection. We could only hear little bits like monkeys' butts, psychedelics, cowboy hats, grotesque but gorgeous. And we were very, very sure that we wanted to go on this journey with you. And very quickly, we came here to Ateneo, Veneto, a beautiful host location here in Venice, for a site visit. And we learned about its history. The building first built as a confraternity that offered spiritual assistance to those that were sentenced to death by hanging. And then from the early 19th century became the Ateneo Veneto, an academy of arts and science, arts, literature and science. And we went through some of the medical books in this very room and the artworks on site. And I'm so curious to hear from you, Natasha, what your first responses and instincts were when you came to the site.
So when I first came to the site, I always felt that Ateneo Veneto is part of the cast. And it's a character itself because the room is not a white cube, and it's already filled with an artwork. That's lots of paintings. But we are always thought that to be distant from the painting. And my idea is how if I make multi-screen and then to have the staggering?
The scaffolding.
The scaffolding. Yeah. And then to elevate the audience, like moving the body to be closer to the paintings. That's what is the first instinct I have.
I remember you mentioned you loved this temporary quality of the scaffold that was like a horror house. And on that note, you also decided to flood the space with red light. Yeah. Can you tell us about that immediate impulse?
I want the painting not to be erased, but then to be blended with the exhibition design. So I wanted to make an ambience, an atmosphere, but that not completely removing everything, just like dealing with it.
It's very dramatic. We love it. We're here also in proximity to La Fenice, the opera house, so it was wonderful to also bring the drama. You mentioned the really saturated colors you'd also seen in Giallo films. Do you want to talk a bit about some of these references?
Yeah, obviously I love Suspiria, Dario Argento, but then I'm also really inspired by the Indonesian horror film that was big on the 90s. And it has so much the quality of bad taste. And
which is important.
Yeah, but I think the grotesque is, I have some like a fascinated to something bad, but in a way it's also beautiful.
So maybe let's set the scene for those who haven't seen the artwork. At the start of the two-channel video, set in the 1950s in Indonesia, a figure known as the Phantom Combatant describes how land is violently carved up by the central government of Indonesia with no regard for the people who inhabit it or the blood spilled to achieve nationhood. Land and people are treated like extractable resources. It's a fragmented retelling of an oral story. What's your relationship to this story of Pemesta and Leng Karamoy? Maybe say a few words about Promesta also, yeah.
So Permesta was a regional movement. An armed rebellion is in eastern part of Indonesia in the late 50s. It grew from the frustration with Java's centralized and government power and a demand for a greater regional autonomy. And the work begins with my research onto the stories of Len Karamoy and Permesta. But it is also how messy history can be, who is remembered, who is erased, and how certain figures survive through gossip, fantasy, and collective memory and sheer stubborn presence. I was growing up in Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia. I learned about Permesta mainly from school books, but it was framed as a rebellion. But amongst my indigenous community in Minahasa, it was often remembered with pride, heroism, and nostalgia. So I grew up with two different versions of the same story. And that tension stayed with me. And it is always a question for me why the women warrior in history book only mentioning about this particular person is the wife of that general. It's not about her presence. So the work follows a female resistance figure who slips between history, rumor, and myth. But rather than telling her story in a straight line, I wanted to build a world around her. A world made from fragments, oral histories, fantasy, military traces, spiritual forces, and strange bodily transformation. And the approach to storytelling is not very tidy or linear, it's anti-narrative probably. I usually begin with the research, oral histories and historical fragments, and then let them move through fiction and atmosphere, performance, and embodiment of some fun. Because for me, fiction is not an escape from history. It is a way making history stranger, more intimate, more excessive, and perhaps more honest.
So in the film, there's a close-up. Well, actually, when the bad guy, the photographer Jan Timbuleng, is in purgatory, awaiting his punishment, and then there's also like a locket. You can see a locket with a photograph. Can you say something about that locket and how you found it?
It is not a locket that I found. It's a made-up locket.
It's a made-up, but the photo.
The photo is from our archive of
yeah.
Both Jan and Len. So I made the whole set, and then it's like putting the details, the locket of Len. In this sense, I do not speak about how Jan Timbuleng is betraying the Permesta, but then how Len Karamoy and Jan hurting each other. And because there are some narratives like it's not the bullet, but it is the organ that betrays you in the neatest way. So both Jan and Len is an organs, part
They're
of
like
Permesta.
interconnected.
Yeah.
And then there's this dramatic break.
Yeah.
But you create these rich, fantastical worlds with like these massive amounts of references to, like Kieran was saying, pop culture, ancestral knowledge, and it seems like you stack reference upon reference. So can you say a bit more about, like even more about how you work to build these worlds, just going from a fragment to an entire world, just like almost kind of pouring over?
So the work started from the collection of field diary.
Yeah.
But then as I started to write a script, I know it's really hard for some people to read or interpret the story, but then it's like always coming impulsively. Like I remember a film or a video game, and then it just goes along the way. Just like the ear songs. So we had the Dutch song when the children are dancing.
Yep.
That was written because I found a story that Permesta people is collecting ears of the rapist, ears of the abuser, and the abusers is our Indonesian central government army.
Yeah, to mark the abuser.
And then, but I wanted to fictionalize and how to portray the era as the fake 50s with the Dutch song, because at that time Indonesians still speak Dutch.
I think you've already gone into it, but I'd like to, there's this distinction that you talk about. You don't reinterpret history, you unsettle it. So what is the unsettling that
Yeah, I don't want it to be like romanticizing the history, because I don't know who wrote the history. Like I'm using the history for something to study and then to be messed around, because there are so much sides of the story, and then to be dramatic, but then depends, yeah.
So your method is very intuitive, and you also improvise a lot. And maybe, Carly, to talk about the film set. Yeah.
It was such a joy. It was such an honor to receive an invitation from Natasha to join her on the video shoot in North Sulawesi. And really what I witnessed there was that you're not film and video production itself is very, very full on, but you're not just taking on production. What you really do is create an ecosystem. What I saw was that you made a big effort to bring in local people. You had already made a site visit and done field research. You had already done interviews with former Promesta members, and then you brought so many of these people into the cast and the crew. And there were also roles like the Tonas, the shaman that was on set, which was very new for me in terms of the roles you would have on set. And hearing that you also created these relationships of mentorship amongst some of the crew that you hired to learn to come into more specialized roles in the film industry, and that some of your sets were also donated back to the local theater. So it's very situated and community focused practice. It's so much more expansive than just production. Can you talk a bit about this approach? It was so beautiful to witness.
Thank you. Yeah, the young girls in the film is the people I collaborate with in the past times when I was making Garden Amidst the Flame in 2022, and then the neighbors is Uncle Freddy Wawor is like the one who I always go into to ask some questions, and then we become like a research partners, and we've been collaborating a lot. And then Freddy was on my other film, Primate Visions, and then in Of Other Tomorrows Never Known. It's like a comfort to work with people who understands you. And then it's also nice way to make something out from the textbook, like working with the local people. But then if I'm saying like local people, it's just weird. Maybe just like working with friends and neighbors. Just look like the people that is closest to you.
And you really had a mix of actors and non-actors
Yeah.
In the cast.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about how you work and how you improvise?
So I usually get inspired by how I saw the character. So, for example, when I saw Asmara Abigail, I always I wish she could be in my film, and then. Finally, she is the Phantom now. And then I always have a imagination of she could be this character, and then maybe the children could be this, and Uncle Freddy could be. Everything is on my head.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You get inspired.
Yeah, I get inspired by people.
I notice the work itself is looking at combat, which is something we might often associate with hypermasculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And more broadly, you also address masculinity within Minahasan culture.
Mm-hmm.
But being on set, I noticed beyond the cast, which is predominantly female, you made a very concerted effort to ensure that your crew also had at least gender parity, because the film industry also tends to still be dominated by men. Mm-hmm. So this was a very concerted effort. Can you talk a bit about this insistence?
Because previously I had a bad experience. Now I try to behave, refusing to behave not nicely in the history. It means like working in Minahasa is working with inheritance, but also messing with it, because the cosmology itself, our ancestor wasn't born from a human, but non-Darwinian and non-heteronormative. We were born from a stone, so the cosmology gives me ritual, ancestral memories, and ways of understanding the relation between human, spirits, animals, and land. But it also gives me machismo and all kind of historical vanity. So I'm trying hard to fight for not to make it as hyper masculine set. Yeah. But I like to approach it with humor. Yeah.
So yeah, you mentioned earlier this working with fragments, but then obviously excess is also another device that you use, and particularly like female excess and monstrosity is something that kind of occurs alongside your explorations of hypermasculinity that you were talking about. So how do you feel that this idea of female excess and the monstrous female body, how does it function in your work?
I think it's a way like opening up parts of history that have been pushed aside, especially the women, the monster, and the excessive bodies, the embarrassing figures, the ones that do not fit the clean heroic script. I am interested in female force not as something polite or respectable, but something more unruly, excessive, sensual, spiritual, and grotesque. So through those kind of excessive and weird bodies, I can hold pride and critique at the same time. I can be close to my culture without romanticizing it. I can honor its complexity while also exposing its machismo and blind spot, and exposing the tensions, the real life tension that happens in Menasa right now. Yeah.
There's I think there's a couple of slides that we should see if we move forward. There's a wonderful, really kind of sci-fi-esque vagina dentata. Let's bring it up. there it is. It's also like a character in the film, and it's this kind of reclaimed emblem of like female power. When did you start? Like, when did you start working with these kind of emblems of female power? Or how did this journey into the, how do we get to the vagina dentata? Because I remember when we were having lots of conversations, and suddenly the vagina dentata popped up. I'm like, oh, gosh. But it was fabulous, and it just made so much sense. But like, maybe going back also to how you work with fragments and how you stack references.
Yeah, I know we had tons of conversation, and honestly, sometimes I don't have the answer, but I have to answer, so I just create at the moment. And yeah, the vagina dentata coming from, obviously it is reference from lots of horror film, but the impregnation of the Phantom is not impregnated by Jan Timulen, but with the force, the spiritual forces of the troops. Maybe it's inspired by cockroach, because the German cockroach can do parthenogenesis, like the ability of reproduce without needing males. Yeah.
So so what does it mean for you to be Minahasan and feminist artist? Before you answer, when our first meetings, you shared this wonderful text by the Indonesian feminist theologian Marian around this kind of double alienation faced by Asian women of colonialism and patriarchy. And it was just such an informative piece of writing, and it really opened up my thinking around this piece of like, what are the ways to resist domination, like to resist being dominated or being the dominator. But so what does it mean for you to be a Minahasan and feminist artist, and how do you kind of link it to a local and global setting?
It's an exercise to speak, because even though the Minahasan considered as the most egalitarian place in Indonesia, it is not like that, because when I first come for a ritual, the question is about why do you have like short hair, why do you act so weird, so and why do certain women has to be like speak like to have like very soft spoken, while I'm not. Sometimes I do not like to talk. Sometimes I like to scream. So I think it's being a Minahasan artist means to working with the inheritance and being pride with the all of the history and cosmology, but then to be able to critique and not like in exotizing the cosmology and the culture, but messing with it, like the courage to messing with the history.
You kind of look at it through kind of a contemporary lens.
Yeah.
We have an image of some of the technologies you've used actually in the background here. You can see the results of our experiment with quantum ghost imaging, and in the next maybe image, got the Phantom, and the next we've got the LiDAR. Here we go. So you've, in addition to live action and CGI, you've brought in all of these different imaging technologies. You have thermal cameras and LiDAR and photogrammetry. But in addition to those, we also have other references to technologies. You have the textures from radio transmissions, and you have the data moshing. And I'm curious how you weave this into an expanded understanding of technology that we also see alongside rituals and ancestral knowledge. Can you tell us a bit about this expanded approach to what technology is and can mean?
I think technology is always part of the indigenous Minahasan people, because everything that we do is also technology. Like technology for the Minahasan is a pharmacon. It's the poison, but it is the cure. And then while making this film and working with you both, I'm trying to reconfigure what's the meaning of the high tech, because LAS is seems like very high tech, but then doing this is just from our phones. So technology should be something helpful and something like daily life, not. But then we also have to be curious on how technology might bring, because it is also part of the surveillance and part of the military suspension. Yes.
Dual use.
Yeah.
Is always the case.
Yeah, like making friends with the technology.
I want to pick up on what you said about the pharmacon, because we have this refrain in the video where the troops say pharmacopolitic, co-resistance, co-mutation, and later in the video you say you have the voiceover saying this pharmacopolitics, poison keeping memory alive. Can you talk a bit? We see all these different transformations in the film, physical, we have workouts, we have the rituals, the birthing ritual giving energy, as you said, the steam bath ritual, there's spiritual transformation, chemical, physical. What is the role of, what is pharmacopolitic? If you could unpack that for us, and what is this almost kind of biohacking that we see in the work?
I think I'm like rethinking the habit of Minahasan people drinking the indigenous liquor, chapticus, as a pharmacopolitic, because it is the medicine for people who just gave birth or for the cold, and then it's an alcohol, and a distilled alcohol that was made in someone's garden. And the Bakera situation is like the steam bath is also part of the biohacking. And why the words like poison keeps memory alive. It is maybe like in vino veritas, like when you drink and then you start to blah, blah, blah.
And how does this then come to function as a tactic of resistance? Yeah. All of the rituals that are part of, training. How does that come to actually become a form of the resistance within the work?
I can maybe give some example from what happened on 2022 when the alcohol becomes very expensive, and it's only few person could access the hand sanitizer, but there are so many volumes of chapticus, the liquor, and the indigenous people start to make the hand sanitizer from that.
And I'm also very curious to come to the character of the space crone. It's a very beautiful gesture in casting this character that is an elder woman, wise woman that has many sagging breasts, but is actually the most powerful character in the video. If you pay attention, the space crone is guiding everything that happens. The space crone is guiding all of the rituals. The space crone actually mediates entry into this teapot that's purgatory, and is really this wise but also very quietly powerful character. Can you tell us about the space crone, the inspiration for this character, and what this knowledge embodies?
So at first, I don't have a name for a space crone, but I always wanted to make an elderly character, like the spiritual leader, but is not male, and who's in charge of helping the ones who's giving birth. And I remember one of the Permesta warrior that I met a few years ago, and she is also a Tonaas, but she already passed away. And then I came into the book by Ursula Le Guin, Space Crone, and I just name it Space Crone, because I also have a friend whose Instagram name is Nightmare Crone. I got really inspired by him. He's a drag queen, and then I wanted to portray an elderly cosmic bodies that is with sagging breasts and sagging bodies without muscles, in contrast to the Phantom and the troops and the photographies, because they are all young, but they are strong. They are playing with guns and swords and stuff. But the Phantom is not the Phantom, but the Space Crone is just being there, being powerful without needing all those muscles. It's like layers and powers that is accumulated within years of experiences, like wise.
So it's a beautiful reference. As soon as you mentioned Space Crone and Ursula Le Guin, I kind of got the article, and it's amazing. And I can see where you were coming from, and it was quite empowering actually to read about this menopausal lady who is like the pinnacle of humanity. It's like, yes. But positioned within, I think the work is positioned within speculative fiction and post-narrative storytelling. It's fragmented and experimental, and it allows histories to fall between the gaps of it allows histories that fall into the gaps of official documentation. And your characters, they function as moods. There's no neat resolution or final victory. It insists that history is messy, and that struggles over autonomy of bodies, cultures, and land remain unsolved. So in the current geopolitical climate, conditioned and shaped by digital systems, hyper-capitalism, and new forms of precarity and exploitation, what are the challenges in your mind to autonomy, and what does it look like today?
So, reflecting to today's condition and looking at the film ends with the word autonomia. And then we were talking about while we making the closed caption, what language is this? It's not I don't know, it's just like made up. And then I'm just like questioning the system. And what does autonomy means to me? And what feels at stake in question of sovereignty of bodies and cultures and land. And autonomia for me, the autonomy not come and not presented as a clean answer. In the video, it appears as a sky text and almost like a weird plane with bubbles. No, not bubbles, it's...
But like thought bubbles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The bubbles, yeah. It's written across the sky by plane that is coming from foreign country. And of course, if we talk on the 50s, the plane must coming from the foreign country, that the contradictions make autonomy feels unstable and almost absurd, something desired very deeply, but also something that can arrive from elsewhere. It can be projected from above or appear a spectacle. So autonomy for me is not a pure or settled condition. It is always complicated by outside forces, by power, by history, and by global influences. This method of speculative approach, through which I also ask who owns the idea of autonomy and who actually benefits from it. Even the language of sovereignty can sometimes come tangled with systems that are not fully our own. What is at stake? Who gets to decide how bodies live, how cultures remembered, and how land is used? I am interested autonomy as not a heroic slogan, but as a fragile structure, the struggle for bodies not to be fully controlled, for culture not to be fully flattened, and for land to be reduced to property or resources. So when autonomia appears on the sky, it is both sincere and uneasy. It is a desire, but also a question.
Like, is it possible?
It is always, can it always be pure, or is it always already entangled with the forces that it's trying to resist in the Cold War or in the current situation?
Okay, thank you, Natasha. And thank you so much for this, and thank you for this journey that we've been on. But maybe we'd open up questions for to the public, or to our audience, I mean. The public.
We have a microphone, so please wait for the microphone. So we're recording. Oh.
Denny.
Congratulations to all of you, because it's a really an amazing exhibition. It's an amazing art space, and really, you nailed it. It's really amazing. Congratulations to all of you. One question I have for Natasha, because we work together. I know your practice. I know Minahasa, and I was very surprised to see this space with the Christian histories in it. And your work relate a lot to the cosmologies and mythologies of Minahasa heritage. But when I went to visit Minahasa, there are also a lot of churches, Christian churches in Minahasa. What was your, when you visited this place, what was your take on this dialogue between these two heritage? I mean, Christian and Minahasa.
Compared to the vastly majority of Indonesian, the Minahasa is like almost 90% Christian, and it is not weird, but it's weird at the same time. I think that maybe because historical Minahasa used to be the 12th province of the Netherlands, and some Minasan people believes the Netherlands is not the colonial. So, and then some Minahasan believes that the Indonesian government is the colony. So it's always nice to learn from different perspectives, and and it's the Spain colony was lost by the Dutch, and the Dutch sent the missionary that is German but paid by Dutch. So the Christian in Minahasa is different from the Christian in the Sumatra. And I don't know, and I remember when I was a child, my mom brought me to Rome and to Venice to see the artwork, to see the Sistine Chapel, and my mom wants to see David. And David is in Vatican, but it's naked. But in Minahasa, people has to be dressed like covered everything. So, but they are Western centric. But in here, like lots of paintings in the church or patronized by church is naked. So I'm curious. But there are lots of corruption within the church, because the church in Minahasa becomes the political tool, just like the mosque in Java. So, I don't know, religion.
And the cycle of oil paintings downstairs, it's a really interesting cycle. It's a cycle of Purgatory by Jacopo Palme il Giovanni, and it's really kind of doubling down on the Counter-Reformation, and saying like, no, Purgatory it's not a corruption of faith like the Protestants are saying, this is the official truth. So it's a space that is claiming permanence in official truth, and that's why I thought it's been so interesting to bring your unsettling of history and other sorts of truths into play. But Carly, you were also saying that when you were in Jakarta or Nusa Sulawesi, that you learned also through Natasha, that this Minahasan cosmology has only been allowed for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. So also the Christian side, that's the more official belief system.
Yeah. And most of the Minahasan people are right-wing, to be honest. When I come to the Netherlands and I met my family that moved to the Netherlands on the 90s. It's different from the Minahasan who moves to the Netherlands on the 60s, because on the one who was moving on the 90s is pretty much very hardcore Christians, and they were asking, are you doing witchcraft in Minahasa? Yes, I did a presentation about Minahasan witchcraft in Stede Lake. So they are really against it. And I learned from my family that they're not allowed. My aunt, my uncles, my mother, my father, they're not allowed to go to the stone site, the Watu Pinawetengan. But for me, if we can go there freely, we can make it as a source of knowledge. Maybe it's just like the Stonehenge, so people can go like freely. Could be cool to be in National Geographic for me, but then it's always been closet because maybe because of the power playing between the colonial and the idea of nation state. So we've been gatekeeping the indigenous cosmology.
You have this refuge we visited in Freddie's home. Freddie, you mentioned earlier, who you said was really a source of knowledge around Minahasan practice and ritual, especially given that it was suppressed for so long. And you mentioned that you first had gone to do a kind of indigenous boot camp, intensive course. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about that and your work with Freddie?
So when I first got interest to learn more about the Minahasan culture, I asked my mom and my dad, and then they refer to other relatives, but then they are like, oh, don't talk about that, that's witchcraft, we're not allowed, we're Christians. And then I don't have any particular answer or learn something more concrete. And I met Freddie through internet when it was during the pandemic, and I was asked him about the ancient rituals. And then he invited me to come for the indigenous school, and I come there. But maybe Carly and Denis was experiencing the rituals in Minahasa as you both went to Freddy's home. It was like we have to like shout, not shout, like whisper, and everything has to be lights must off. Yeah, and then neighbors shouldn't know about this. That's happened on several neighborhoods.
Yeah, but it's still very discreet.
Yeah, but I wanted to celebrate the ritual with pride. Yeah.
Do we have further questions from the audience yet?
Zian.
Thanks. It's helpful to hear that. And I also want to further ask a question in that thread. So does that mean, are you learning all the other Minahasan rituals with introduction by Freddie? And does that mean that, what do you feel about, if I may say, your connection to ancestrality is through the internet kinship rather than from your immediate family members? And maybe an open question around that.
Yeah, I think the family is like someone we chose, like the chosen family, and I found my family through internet. Yeah, like how they found me through internet.
I'd like to know how provocative your artwork is for your not chosen family.
Of course, they are against with it because like exposing breasts, and then it is like very freedom and punk, and I don't know if it's possible to be shown in the context of Indonesia, not in a private way.
So they haven't seen this artwork?
No, I'm scared they will come tonight. Yeah. Yeah, but I always shared my film within the community of Watu Pina Wetengan, also with the neighbors in Minahasa. So maybe twice a year, they always welcome with it. But in Indonesian context or in Jakarta, it has to be like censored, probably.
Any other questions?
Thank you for the conversation. One of the things that really draw me to your work is how it processes popular culture. And you're talking about your inheritance, your relationship to inheritance, and how you are processing that and also messing with that. And I wanted to hear about how you're doing that with popular culture, because there's so many ways that you make references to popular culture, not only specific to a locale, but globally.
Yeah, because I'm the child of the internet. Yeah, everything that I consume during my childhood becomes really great reference to me, like video games, the Magic School Bus, and then Monty Python, and lots of things. And it just becomes a bank of reference. So, yeah.
And Alice in Wonderland.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was a good one, yeah.
Yeah, Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
And Pippi Longstocking.
Pippi Longstocking, yeah. It's like we're all global, yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like as much as you love them, you're also really messing with them, and that you're like very irreverent toward some of the things that you love the most.
Yeah, I like, yeah.
We have a final question, which is that the work itself is this incredible spatial sound design. It's so rich. The soundtrack is incredible, the sound design and original music. And we were playing some of the music, not only from this work, but also from Garden Amidst the Flame that you're showing right now at the Carnegie. As you entered the room, we're going to play the music again as you exit. So we thought it would be nice to end with a question about the music in your work and your collaboration with Harsha Wohono through this time in actually creating this other sonic world for each of your works.
My collaboration with Harsha is because I trust him, my confidante. And it is somehow difficult for me to interpret what I want, and then I really like bad jazz. But then the bad jazz requires a high skill. Absolutely. And Harsha said he can do it, but then he also asked me to contribute, like making the voice and then the Foley and everything. So it's fun process, like a very Montessori. Yeah.
Well, we're rallying for you to release a record.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
We do hope that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. Actually, I should make one plug before we go, which is that this work is chapter 3 of Natasha's anthology called Macho Mystic Meltdown. Chapter 2, called Monster She Wrote, will be screening on Saturday at 12:30 as part of the Asia Forum. You can RSVP for free on Eventbrite, so find it and please go see it. It also stars the fabulous Asmara, who's here.
The curator was here, but he's gone.
Oh, he's gone.
Yes,
Okay.
true.
Yeah.
But with that, a huge thank you to you, Natasha, and thank you so much to the audience for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, iPad. Yeah, thank you, iPad.